Hey everybody! Welcome to the book launch party for The Hereafter Bytes by Vincent Scott and Luna's Lament by David Colby. This is the third book in the Lunar Cycle. So glad you all could make it today. I'm Keiko O'Leary and I'll be your host. So I'm one of the co-founders of Thinking Ink Press, along with Lisa Olmsted, who's waving to you right now, and Anthony Francis, also waving, and Betsy Miller. So that's us. We published these books and lots of other books. So here's a couple of other science fiction things. These are steampunk anthologies that we published, and this is David's first book, which we are going to have a contest. And you can enter to win an ebook of The Hereafter Bytes by typing The Hereafter Bytes into the chat, or an ebook of any one of David's Lunar Cycle trilogy by typing Luna's Lament into the chat. And if you win, we'll ask you which one you want. So if you haven't read the first one yet, you can start with that one. And feel free to type any comments into the chat. And when we have the Q&A with the authors, you can type your questions into the chat too. So if you're on a computer, just below the video part, there's a button that has a little, what is the thing called, dialogue balloon. And you push that and then you can see all of the chat with some unfortunate comments. And type in there and it will go to, it's supposed to go to everyone. That's not doing what I want. Lisa, can you fix that so that it only can go to everyone, please?
I believe that it is set so that it should only go to everyone.
I seem to be able to send it.
I think you and I are special because we're hosts.
Oh, okay. Well, good for us. Okay, good. And if you want to have your video off, that's fine, but we love to see your face, and it helps the authors to be able to notice that you're listening to them read. Is there anything else I was supposed to say? Oh yeah, we're if you would like to buy these books, we unfortunately do not have a table in the back because there is no back and there is no table. So Lisa will paste the links for the books into the chat, and you can click on them to buy the books. You can always wait to see if you win first with the contest, and then buy it afterwards if you don't. But hopefully you will. So first up, we have Vincent Scott, the wonderful author of The Hereafter Bytes. Marion Deeds says, The Hereafter Bytes is a zany, fast-paced adventure. Imagine a cyberpunk novel written by Sir Terry Pratchett and Robin Williams, and you'll have an idea of the treat you're in for. Please welcome Vincent Scott.
Sorry, hang on, let me unmute you.
No. Yeah, thank you so much for hosting this. Thank you everyone for coming. Shall I just jump right into the reading, or should we get started? All right, awesome. Yeah, I'm going to read the first couple of chapters of The Hereafter Bytes. Chapter 1, Ping Pong, June 18th, 2063, 4:37 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. A passenger drone whirred past the bus window 2 stories above the river of autonomous cars below. I glanced out the window, following the drone's path as far as I could from my vantage point. Crammed as I was in between a sweating bicyclist and a man who smelled like beef stock in the middle aisle, there wasn't a lot of room to maneuver. The drone vanished beyond the windowsill. Someone was going somewhere important, leaving me behind. That felt on point for the day. My phone chirped. I brought up the notification in my smart contact. Can you talk? The social faux pas of using the phone on mass transportation was not something I would normally do, but I wanted to talk. It had been a bad day. Sure, I sent. My phone rang and I nearly dropped it. Recovered, checked the caller, remembered that I knew who was calling, nearly dropped it again, recovered again, and answered the call. A nearby passenger looked at me like my last several moments had destroyed her flagging faith in humanity. I shrugged apologetically. Hey, Abigail. Hey, Romeo. Just wanted to see if you're okay. Izzy said you were making it official today? Yeah, I just did. I'll be okay. I'm really sorry. It's not your fault. You sure you don't want me to help out? Izzy would understand. No, I said. Izzy deserves to run her own business. I could invest in her business in a few years. Visual arts isn't exactly a lucrative major, Abigail. I was going to be just as employable with the degree as I am now. She snorted. I mean, look, I said. Is this the end of my life? Yes. Am I going to end up going to prison for stealing a loaf of bread? Undoubtedly. Will I escape and go on a long adventure fleeing from an overdedicated police officer who doesn't believe in a person's ability to reform? Only time will tell. Isn't that the plot of Les Miserables? How would I know? I didn't graduate from college. Okay, Abigail said, you're really okay? I'll survive. Hey, she said, lots of successful people dropped out of college. I think most of them had marketable skills. Yeah, I think they probably did, she said. You could come and work for me. I laughed. You know, I would, I said, but I just don't look good in leather. Latex? I think I might be allergic. Excuses, excuses. You're never going to get hired with an attitude like that. Another passenger shot me a dirty look for talking on my phone. I tried to work up the courage to roll my eyes at them. My work was in vain. The courage would not rise. I should go, I said. Okay, Abigail said. How about a fuck the system drink this evening? I can't really. I'm buying, obviously. I know your broke ass can't afford it. Oh, in that case, great. Talk to you later. Drop out. Bye. I fumbled trying to put the phone back in my pocket. I looked up to see if any passengers were still giving me dirty looks. Several of them were. I don't remember what happened next, but I've seen the security footage. Brace yourselves. Things get grisly. There was a bang. The bus lurched to the left, a crash, and my body covered the distance from the middle of the bus to the front windshield as if I'd been fired out of a cannon. My elbow hit the front window first, and at this conference of physics, my joint and the glass decided to compromise. The window shattered, my elbow exploded. I flew, or perhaps hurtled, there was very little in the way of aerodynamic grace involved, over the car we collided with. Its occupants were indisposed. Self-driving vehicles has allowed people to fill their time on the freeway with all sorts of activities they didn't used to. Hey, at least they died happy. I hit the cargo truck behind the car, and thanks to the curvature of its hood, bounced. High, 51 feet, according to the security footage, which went viral in darker corners of the internet. My pelvis was turned into a collection of bone toothpicks, my still intact arm broke, and my right knee decided bending 90 degrees in only one direction was for squares. Don't worry, at this point I was profoundly unconscious. If you're a compassionate person, you might be thinking, surely this is over. How much pain can one roguishly handsome, shockingly intelligent man take? Nice description. Totally inaccurate, but nice. The problem is, compassion is something humans made up. Gravity doesn't give a shit about compassion. If gravity was capable of caring about anything, I think it would be a very simple life principle. What goes up must come down, unless it reaches escape velocity, but unfortunately this is not a story about my daring adventures in space. I fell 51 feet back down to earth into the lane adjacent to the stopped traffic. I sprawled like a handful of wet noodles just in time for a soccer mom's self-driving minivan to run over both my legs and check the geometry on this one, break my nose. Pretty wild, right? Apparently I missed out on a career as a contortionist. If you're a reasonable person, you might be thinking at this point, my goodness, I didn't know I could commune with the dead, but I must be able to because this human lawn dart is decisively deceased. First of all, shut up. I let the first thought pass, but I'll do the thinking in this story. Second, yeah, you're right, I'm dead. Is that freaking you out? Don't panic. I'm not here for your soul, like I'd tell you if I was. I died, not actually on the freeway, after I left the soccer mom with the uncomfortable responsibility of explaining to her kids what that bump sound was. I was whisked away to the local hospital. I clung to life like a pro athlete clings to the fiction that they've never taken performance-enhancing drugs. Not once, never, okay, fine, many times over a period of years. With that concession, my heartbeat stopped. It was 2063, and modern medicine can do some pretty impressive things, but when Providence throws you through an improvised meat grinder, that's for keeps. So anyway, that's my story. Thanks for stopping by. That's all there is. The rest of the pages are blank. See you later. What? You're still here? Fine, I'll tell you what happened next. I warn you now, the story only gets weirder. I want you to know, I didn't ask for any of this. I'm not weird. There was a time when I was just your run-of-the-mill, asexual college dropout working in a server farm full of dead people whose best friend is a dominatrix. Totally normal. Okay, I mean, normality is subjective. Chapter 2. Rosa Gallan's Rosa Gallan. Month, day, year, blank, blank. Press 1 for AM. Press 2 for PM. Select region. In 2051, a woman named Rosa Gallan made a historically significant announcement. Her startup, Remind Inc., had invented a scanner that could capture enough detail of the functioning mind to recreate it on a computer. Further, they had managed to simplify many of the lower functions of the brain, which radically reduced the amount of processing power necessary to simulate it. Using this technology, they had created a copy of Rosa Gallan. The world was astounded. While people working on AI had been arguing for decades about whether conscious AI had already been invented, was soon to be invented, or was impossible to invent, Rosa Galan and her company had recreated consciousness inside digital space. They had leapfrogged the entire process of actually understanding what consciousness was and just copied nature's homework. Things took a strange turn shortly after. Rosa Galan's copy sued the real-world Rosa in court. The copy argued that they were essentially the same person. Therefore, the copy had as much right to control the company as their personal assets as the biological Rosa. The biological Rosa's lawyer said this was ridiculous, but when asked by the judge why, they found themselves struggling to find a cogent reason. The case immediately became a national sensation. Human rights organizations and religious groups got involved on both sides. Every news outlet in the world had daily coverage of the case. I was in high school at the time, so I was obviously taking an avid interest in literally anything else. In the midst of the legal proceedings, Congress decided that having two of the same person was too disruptive, regardless of what the courts decided. A law passed that outlawed copying a living person. Scientists objected that this could fatally stifle the search for the mechanism of consciousness. A few months later, the Rosa copy suggested the solution. By that point, the Supreme Court had decided that the copying would be handled like a divorce, with assets split between the two Rosas. Now, with a significant stake in the company, the copy suggested a bold new direction. If you can't copy living people, why not copy dead ones? The company rebranded itself as EternityNet and offered to copy the minds of anyone who wanted some version of themselves to live on after death. Philosophers assured the public that this was about as much like an afterlife as a sailboat is like a spaceship. The public didn't listen. In a country where people have spent millions on cryogenics, the idea of having some consciousness outlast death was too exciting to ignore. People did it by the thousands, then tens of thousands. Over the next decade, more than 18 million people worldwide had copied their minds to be stored inertly until the time of their deaths. They had all kinds of elaborate explanation for why it wasn't just a copy. I saw a news report where a man insisted he thought his soul was pretty clever, and he would figure out how to jump from his biological mind to the digital one. Questions started to emerge like, should they vote? Should they pay taxes? What social programs should they receive? As the primary things the digital copies needed were power, hard drive space, software, and processing capacity, it opened up an entirely new can of resurrected worms. It has long been understood by learned people that the Congress of the United States only takes action when a lot of people are yelling at it, and people were yelling. Some wanted the technology banned outright as the work of the devil. Others wanted the technology made universally available to every American. What did the Congress do? What has the U.S. Congress always done when there was a difficult choice to be made? They made it a states' rights issue. Washington State, where I'm from, took a hands-off approach at first. Then the family members of someone who had intended to get copied, but was bucked by a horse before they could get around to it, sued the hospital who refused to copy their loved one's comatose mind. Shortly after, by which I mean 2 years later, hey, that's fast in government time, a law was passed that required that all accident victims be copied. Now, if you don't want to be copied, you have to fill out paperwork. It's like, do not resuscitate, do not copy. So now there are a lot of us. Nobody has an exact number, but tens of millions worldwide. As these copies became an increasingly important force in the digital world, people started asking what to call them. The answer was obvious. The first usage is debated, but the names seemed to emerge everywhere all at once. The copies were called ghosts. So that's the first two chapters.
Yay.
Thank you. You're very kind.
Okay, so ready for Q&A?
Sure, absolutely.
All right. Yay. So I see people are typing into the chat, the Hereafter Bytes and Luna's Lament, depending on which book you want to win. And feel free to type both of those titles into the chat because you can enter both prize drawings. And at the end of the Q&A, we'll do the drawing for the Hereafter Bytes. So let me just make sure there's nothing else I need to say. Go ahead and type your questions for Vincent into the chat. And I'll start you off with a question that we found from before, which is, what's something that has helped you become a better writer?
Let's see. I guess appreciating that all the rules are more like guidelines anyway. Like you can, virtually every rule you will be told about how to be a good writer has been broken at some point by someone who wrote incredible work. Now that doesn't mean you shouldn't learn the rules, and that doesn't mean you shouldn't like value them. There's a reason why they recur. But definitely I think you can get hung up, especially on specific rules. You can like some author you admire is like, I never do this. And then you get hung up on it. And I think you just gotta appreciate, like, if it works, it works. There's no right way to write a book. There's the right way for you to write a book. And that will usually involve you breaking some of the rules of some authors that you greatly admire who write differently.
Thank you. I love that answer. So guys, feel free to type into the chat if you have any questions for Vincent about writing, about his world, about what it's like to be a copy of a living person who is no longer living. Oh, here we go. So Sergio says, what inspired the story of the book?
So the original concept for Ghost sort of came out of the desire for, I wanted to talk about otherness and humanity and, being a person, personhood. And so I was looking for something that, one of the things I love about science fiction is that you can sort of take really hotbed, very like intense issues and shift them into a context where it's not that they don't matter anymore, but they're now in a vacuum that allows you to sort of set aside people's preconceived notions and heuristics. And I really like that. I think that's one of the most amazing things about genre fiction in general and science fiction in particular. And so I needed a group of people that could, from superficial observation, would be very different, and you could sort of see how people's reaction to them initially might be sort of antagonistic, but also you could instantly relate to, because really, and I think this is very common for all the various groups that get marginalized in the world, it's like the moment you feel any kind of personal connection to them, you go, oh, okay, yeah, there's a lot more in common here. There's a lot more like, human connection is a lot easier than we realize. You just have to get over that initial hurdle of otherness and anxiety about those initial superficial differences that are sometimes easier to see. And so that was the initial concept of people in a new form that so I could explore that idea of how societies can get into the habit of otherizing people without really like ever spending any time seeing what their lives are like. And then the other thing is, as a larger theme in the book, I wanted to explore the idea of like monetizing brain work. I think it's something like we talk a lot about labor, and I think that's very good and important, but also like mental labor and emotional labor is something that is starting to get talked about, but kind of gets diminished and sidetracked because it's a lot less tangible. It's a lot more sort of conceptual thing, but it's also really important. And I don't want to give any spoilers away for the book, but like the sort of larger idea of, how much are we entitled to, appropriating the mental and emotional labor of others is an element in the book. And so I just wanted to explore those things. And then also I just love the work of like Terry Pratchett and Douglas Adams. And so, different world, but also with a bunch of humor.
Yeah, I noticed you had Don't Panic in there.
Yes.
Little nod to Douglas Adams, maybe.
Yes. Yeah,
All
there are a few
right.
little sprinkled in things of various works I've loved.
Yeah, that's always fun. Sergio says thank you, and Scott Lewis asks, how did you come up with the Four Hands character?
So I wanted some Four Hands. Not to spoil, Four Hands is a very unusual, fairly dangerous character that appears later in the book. And I wanted someone who was kind of like sort of appealing, but also immediately unsettling. That's a hard line to walk, of someone who's just like, the Four Hands is very, very polite, but also sort of disconnected from the people around her. She's a hit woman, basically. And so I wanted someone who sort of struck that balance. And I just liked the idea of someone who was like very in their own world, and the danger they posed to people around them was not so much born out of any kind of like animosity or hostility, but I think another recurring theme is like how sometimes just not caring can be as violent and destructive as like actively being antagonistic or hostile. And Four Hands is a demonstration of that. It's just someone who doesn't care, and so that makes her incredibly dangerous to the people around her.
Scott Lewis says, thank you. And we have one more question before we're going to move on to the next part, but there'll be another question and answer session at the end. So if you thought of something, just save it till later. Catherine says, how much time did it take between coming up with the idea and having a finished book? What were some of the challenges you ran into?
It was about, like, I think 16, 18 months, something in there, a year and a half to write the book. And challenges are, it's just, it's easy to follow comedy when you make the comedy the priority. And so you just go to the topics that easily meld with comedy. It's a lot harder to do comedy when you've got a topic and then you have to make it funny, especially when some topics are like kind of, you know, intense and kind of emotionally draining. To find a way to lighten that was a consistent struggle throughout the book. There were definitely long stretches where I would just get hung up on something and just be like laid out on the floor, like, how do I make this funny? What's funny about this situation? What can I do to subvert this? And yeah, that was probably the biggest struggle. Is, you know, I had a clear sense of what I wanted to say. I had a clear sense of what I wanted the world to be, but then I just had to figure out ways to just, you know, constantly savagely make fun of all those things. So that was no.
Thank you. Yay, so it's your last chance to enter the contest to win the Hereafter Bytes. Just type Hereafter Bytes into the chat, or you can even type HB if you want to go really fast. And Lisa will do the magical random number generator method to find out who has won. So I'll just give, oh look, people are still entering the contest. What did I have? I remember we had some kind of a silly question to ask you while we're waiting. Okay, anybody else want to enter? Okay, so I'm going to close down the entries for the Hereafter Bytes, and Lisa's going to do her magic. And while we're waiting for that, if you want to type in what technology from the future do you wish we had already? If you want to type in your answer to that question, we can have a little fun silliness. Oh, okay, one more entry for the Hereafter Bytes. Okay, Sergio says teleportation is a technology from the future he wishes that we had already. That would be really useful. Rose says mind reading, teleportation. Marion.
Yeah, teleportation definitely makes just a whole lot of problems that suddenly get solved. Or you can just instantaneously make something go from one place to another. It's
right, but then it creates a whole lot of problems too.
Sure. Well, that's always how it goes, right?
Gail says holodecks. Marion, faster than light travel. Common language. Wow, that'd be interesting. Okay, our winner is Charlotte. Yay, Charlotte, congratulations. So you have won an ebook of the Hereafter Bytes. Lisa says that she knows you, so she'll reach out to you to get your delivery information. Congratulations. Yay. Okay, I'm making sure I'm not gonna miss anything with my magical paper. That's still something that can be useful in the world. I guess not if you're a ghost.
Well,
oh, maybe it is though, right?
Paper, so clearly got some value.
Sorry, say it again.
You can't Zoom bomb paper, so it clearly has some value.
True. Okay. So next, I would like to figure out where I'm supposed to be on this thing. There we go. Next, we've got our wonderful author, David Colby, author of Luna's Lament and Debris Dreams, and also Shattered Sky, which is the middle book in this series that I'm not going to show at this moment. Luna's Lament is book 3 of the Lunar Cycle, David's trilogy of young adult military sci-fi. Publishers Weekly calls Lunar Cycle Book 1, Debris Dreams, appealingly reminiscent of an updated Heinlein juvenile. It's a story of wartime bravery, principles, and self-sacrifice. So here's David, read to you from Luna's Lament.
Let's just jump right into the action then. Chapter 5, Smoke. This is from near the middle of the book, and context, as they say, is for wimps. 7/10/2068, Hong Kong, China. T-minus L day 4. Smoke 'em. For a moment, everything slowed down. The tango I had in my sights was going about 50 kph with a pretty hefty crosswind. My augmented reality and my instincts worked in tandem to put a bullet right there. My PK-404 coughed and tried to buck, but I held it stock still. 4 other coughs went off at the same time from 5 other places, and 5 other bullets struck. The 5 tangos dropped, and their jeep slewed out of control for a few feet, the auto brakes kicking into effect and the AI bringing it to a smooth stop. We all moved out of cover, our active camo making us look like ghosts. Ghosts with guns. Something was wrong. No time to think. Alvarez, indicated by a few symbols overlaid in my augmented reality, went to the front of the jeep and tugged one of the bodies out. I hurried to keep up, moving to grab my target and hauling him off as well. I overshot a bit and the body went flying into the river we'd been hiding by. Alvarez shot me a duct. Careful, PR. Gloria and Lee took the back seats. All right, Alvarez ducted to the rest of us. Lee, PR, start her up. On this exercise, I was part of the InfoSec team. I'd had plenty of practice slipping past selection security, though after weeks of hard 24-hour training on neurotropics and time dilation, I knew just how stupidly naive I'd been to think that they hadn't left plenty of holes for me to slip through. Now I had actual training and, more than that, wired reflexes and headwear. Slicing into the Tango security systems and spoofing their biometric feedback was the work of seconds, which was a good thing. Their AIs would have noticed something might have been wrong, but there's always a short delay so that an alarm didn't go off every time someone adjusted their vest or joggled their cut rate, secondhand, old tech biometric contacts. That was the idea, at least. We're good. Lee spoke more often with tight beam radio than with his mouth. I guess that had to be part of why he'd been picked for the S3TA. Good, Alvarez gestured, rolled the jeep into the water and switched to cheetahs. Gloria shoved the jeep as I steered, the brakes having been cut with a single quick stab through the hood from Alvarez. The stab hadn't come from a knife. Rather, he'd used his forearm blade, which had popped out with his punch, and sliced through the metal tube and then smoothly pulled out. The jeep slipped into the lake and was gone, as if it had never been. We ghosted and moved out, loping, springing strides, pumping us through the air. Active camo had to work crazy hard to blur us, but moving fast and shifting our stances and speed made us almost impossible to pin down if anyone did spot the movement. I'd seen footage of a squad fully ghosting. If I hadn't known what I'd been looking at, I'm not sure what I'd have called it. A blur that moved past it, a blur that moved past at car speeds. But that question was just a distraction from another question, like why exactly were we training here in this particular virtual reality sim? This had nothing to do with space or Luna. Both questions dissolved through my fingers as I fell into the movement. A focus on dipping and shifting around trees, on wind rushing past my face, on my skin shimmering and shifting, matching the coloration and hue of my skin to the forest behind me. Predator. The term was perfect. It wasn't like it was in space where everything was mathematics. Here, I could shift my weight and change my trajectory. I could bounce and rebound. I could dance. It was like having thrusters on for the first time, but multiplied by 1,000. We didn't go along the road, but instead we cut through a forested area, coming along the bluff that looked out over the base. It was the new pattern of terrorist hidey hole, complete with a brace of hovering camera drones that backed up the few men and women with rifles and picket towers. They covered prefab buildings holding their supplies, people, and at least one computer hub to jack into the government network, all of it camouflaged against aerial observation and satellites. Not from us, though. I count 25. Alvarez de-ghosted behind a tree, turning his head to look at us. Confirmed, I nodded. All right, 2 by 2. Me and Gloria will be providing overwatch. Smoke 'em quiet. I nodded. Lee blipped up on my AR. He was my second. Alvarez didn't micromanage us. He could have. In early training runs, when Gloria had been in charge, she'd been a bit RTS. She kept giving us waypoints and patrol routes to go along. It was comforting, until our first TPK. We got wiped when everyone, also focused on their little skirmishes rather than the whole fight, got completely blindsided by a goddamn tank. That was the beauty and the danger of the link we had. With tactical networks, instant communication, head computers, and augmented reality, information became infectious. Finding the right mix of sharing and focus and intercommunication had gotten us all killed. A lot. That was fun. Mostly because each and every simulation was run with full immersion feedback. I knew for a fact that getting shot hurt. Being shot in VR didn't just hurt, though. It was freaking humiliating. Lee and I went down the bluff, moving slowly and carefully, our cheetahs turning into regular legs. Yeah, turned out all my fancy neologisms weren't needed. Cheetahs were based off of old, early 21st century augmentations before the slump. They fell out of favor after the singularity scare made cybernetics the next best thing to becoming a horror movie monster, and had been entirely replaced by cloned replacement blimps. But even before you factor in the pneumatics, the synth muscle, the composite materials, and a million other factors that made our cheetahs better than the old-style blade legs, a runner with blade legs could still outpace a standard Homo saps. We could outpace some ground cars, which was why we used our standard legs when we moved out, keeping our pace slow to prevent the active camo from blurring too much. Though, we also had the standard reason to be nervous. People noticed things when they made the wrong noise, when plants moved and no one was there to push them. They noticed things like that, and then they opened fire. Even if they hadn't heard ghost stories or seen too many spec-fic vids, they were still on guard and twitchy as hell in an era where drone support and stealth aircraft could put a dozen commandos on your ass. That made anyone bullet crazy. Lee came to the bottom of the bluff. In the vids, special forces and badass commandos held up their hands to communicate. Hell, before we'd gotten augmentations, we'd done that too. I still sometimes threw up a hand to stop my teammate rather than ducting. Lee never, ever forgot. He threw up a stop indicator on my augmented reality, then tagged 3 tangos, each one circled by a glowing outline as they moved to the edge of the camp. Pickets. I moved left, and Lee went right. Stealth training, and in the back of my mind, I was still boggling that we were wasting time on stealth training that could only be used in ground operations. Told me to stay light, move slowly, carefully, from place to place. Shift the mass on the ball of your feet. Ridiculous, but it worked down here. But in space, smoke 'em. I fired and Lee fired at the same time. 2 bullets bit into the back of 2 of the 3 men patrol. The 3rd man half turned before 2 more bullets bit into him. We made sure to hit them in places that kept them from crying out, but we still had to work quickly, as the other teams had to be rolling up their tangos too. We left them where they fell. Lee threw up a branch path and took left. I went right, crouching and moving slow. I smoked 3 more who were hanging out at one of the patrol towers and ducked it, taking the high ground, holding position. Lee maintained the security at the bottom of the tower. As a certified marksman, I wasn't exactly special. Hell, Gloria had been certified before I'd even joined the Marines, or done more than play a few vid games. But I still had something she lacked. I knew how to stay still. I could stay still in my sleep, something these Earthers never seemed to manage to figure out, not in the gut instinct level a Spacer did. I climbed up the ladder, moving carefully to keep the active camo moving. Some of the people in the outer watchtowers had noticed that something was wrong and were chattering in their radios. Their voices, speaking some dialect of Mandarin I'd never heard before in my life, squawked over their dead buddies' comms. I took overwatch, covering as much of the camp as I could. Before my Augs, without a headwear, I'd have been deorbiting without a heat shield, trying to cover the whole camp. It was too spread out, too cluttered, too thick with foliage and tiny hints of movement. Like there were at least 5, maybe 7 vague lumps shrouded by leaves and grass and dirt that could be buildings, with dozens of winding paths between each. It covered at least 300 meters square. But with my headwear, it outlined every possibility, then dimmed out stuff that stopped twigging the computer's pattern recognition. Every time new data came in that made the computer sit up and take notice, outlines would brighten, letting me focus on them and identify animals, shifting plants, bad guys. Alvarez smoked the other covering tower as my headwear finished laying out the bad guys. By now, alarms had started ringing throughout the base. Of course, by now, they were also down to half their effectives. I worked quick, snapping to the wired reflexes to take advantage of my position and my data. Wiring up had its disadvantages. The first one was that your rapid movement screwed up your active camo, turning you from a ghost into a really obvious blur. The second and slightly more lethal downside had to be the fact that it ran your neural ogs hot. More processing power meant more waste heat, which was just the only way it could go. But if you ran too long and got too hot, your brain melted. Not literally. The literal actuality was that your brain boiled. Earlier training this week had included videos of prototype transhumans with superheated blood shooting out from around their eye sockets. The noises that came from after the cameras were splattered with blood were the worst part. I forced that memory away as everything slowed to a crawl. 5 more tangos were coming out of what looked like an old bunkhouse, old M1A1s and AK-136s in hand. I sighted and let loose with a few short bursts, 2, 3, 2, 2, 1. The bullets made tiny little red thumps on their flesh. Smoke. They hit the ground and my AR flashed up an ammo indicator. 2, actually. The first was mine, 3/31, and the other was a hypothetical counter. One of the tangos had spotted something he thought was worth shooting at, and my AUGs were trying to ID the gun and count out the bullets from the sounds. It sounded like a PK. I thought the words and the indicator came up. 30/40 bullets fired. A few other indicators popped up, and I banished them to the far right-hand side of my view, focusing on another group of tangos going to support the people firing at Gloria's 2x2. I smoked them, and a muffled bang sounded, throwing up a smoke cloud near the building. Then, silence. We're clear. Exciting. And that's what I read.
Yay, thank you, David. Lots of loving. Okay, so we're gonna have a Q&A. Just kidding, I muted myself. It'll be time for Q&A with David, and I just wanted to remind you, if you wanted to win a copy of David's ebook, Luna's Lament, or one of the other books in the Lunar Cycle trilogy, just type Luna's Lament, or you can type LL into the chat, but do them capital though, so we can tell that it's not II, you know how that is. And also, please type in any questions that you have for David about writing or about his book, any of the things that you heard him read just now. I'm sure there's lots of interesting questions that might come into your mind because of that. And I'll start you off with a question that we have from before, which is, was there a scene for you that was particularly hard to write?
No, not really.
Because it's David Colby!
Like there were scenes that I was worried about doing badly. I didn't want to mess up any of the emotional scenes or the big twist scenes or the post-story wrapping up scenes. I wanted to make sure they were all good, but they weren't like hard to write. Sorry for the really boring answer.
That's okay. We're just interested in seeing the diversity of how writers write. So I've got a question from Gail. What was the inspiration for the Debris Dreams trilogy?
I was in college with a long distance girlfriend, and I wanted to encapsulate that feeling in a book. And so I took it to the most ludicrous extreme of what if my girlfriend was in space and I wasn't in space? And then I swapped that around because I wanted to be in space. Then I just had to extrapolate out why the characters were in space, what was going on, how to have laser beams, because you got to have the lasers. And then that just ended up working in a lot of my feelings about the then recent Iraq and Afghanistan wars. I say then recent because I think I started writing this in like 2008. So like it had already been 7 years. So and that's basically the inspiration, and it all rolled from there.
Thank you. Holly says, was there a favorite scene that you ended up cutting out?
The problem is that when I delete a scene, it vanishes from my memory too. So I don't actually remember anything that we cut. Like, I don't actually think that we cut that much. Though, okay, if you don't mind me talking about Shattered Skies instead of Luna's Lament, the thing that I missed the most that I cut from Luna's Lament, or from Shattered Skies, was the entire book, because I actually had to delete and rewrite basically that entire book when I turned it into my first publisher, Candlemark and Gleam. And my publisher was basically like, this is terrible, rewrite it. She was more polite than that, but the end result is a big improvement. So yeah, that's the thing I missed the most, is the terrible first draft of Shattered Skies.
Thank you. Okay, and I just realized that the person I said is Holly is actually Madeline Holly Rosing, who did us a ton of wonderful expert help on the Kickstarter for Vincent's book. So thank you so much, Madeline. Sorry, I did not recognize that it was you at first because I only see this name. Let's see. Sergio says, David, you are a prolific writer. What is your secret?
I sold my soul to the devil. Alternatively, I just write every day. It helps that I'm unemployed. I wasn't unemployed before the pandemic, but with all the schools being closed, I'm not a teacher, I'm a crossing guard. I no longer have even that paltry amount of work, so I have a lot of time to sit around and write. It's a very privileged position that I'm in, and if you have a real job, that's probably what takes up more time and mental energy. I just have a lot of extra because I'm a lucky guy. I also think I write faster than other people just because I do, and I'm not entirely sure how.
Yeah, I'm in a writing group with David, and I can attest that he writes faster than most people. Yeah, Anthony is miming how fast David types. Casey says, do you have a general idea of where the story is going to go when you start writing? What's your process? Do you discover the plot while you're writing, or you plan it out beforehand?
I usually have ideas for scenes that I want to have happen, and then I get to them the way that I get to them. For example, I will want to have a scene where a character learns X secret, but I won't really know the exact details of how they get from there to there, and I just kind of write what I think the characters are going to do, keeping in mind everything I've thought of about the world and what's going on. And if I'm ever stuck, I just go talk to my other writer friends, or spitball with my girlfriend, or just talk to myself in the shower, and that usually comes up with the answer if I'm stuck. That's basically how I do it.
All right. So I've got one more question, and then we're going to do the drawing for the prize. So if you haven't entered the prize drawing yet, just type LL into the chat, and you'll be entered for the prize drawing in just a little bit. The last question is from, I'm not sure how to say your name, but I'm going to say Vincent. What are the challenges to your daily discipline?
Currently, the biggest challenge to writing what I should be writing is that I'm having way too much fun writing a Babylon 5 fan fiction. So I sometimes have to tell myself, no more writing Babylon 5 fan fiction until you write what you're supposed to be writing. And when I say too much fun, I mean, I started this fan fiction last month, and it's currently at, let me just pull up these stats here. I started it August 25th, and it's currently at 160,000 words. Please send help. Somebody
sounds like you're having a lot of fun. All right. Well, thank you so much, David. And last chance to enter the contest. Quickly type in LL into the chat. So while we're waiting for Lisa to work her magic, if you want to type into the chat, if there is a chore you wish a robot could do for you, feel free to type that in. Oh, and I collected a couple of other ones that people said technology that they wish we had already. Catherine said a device that converts imagined images into visible images. I want that. And Madeline said a food synthesizer. Beth said instant communication to other worlds. That would be really useful. So Madeline says clean the house, cook, and run errands. We need the robots. Sleeping. Wow, that would be super useful if somebody could sleep for you. I love it. A robot can massage you. I think there's like sort of a version, right? There's those chairs, but it's not like the kind we imagine where it's like the Isaac Asimov robots massaging you. Oh, Scott Lewis, thinking of what to make for dinner. I need that one so badly. Somebody make an AI that tells you, that decides what you should have for dinner. I also do not mind making the dinner. Yay, thanks you guys. Let's see, the winner is Beth Lewis. So look in the chat because Lisa is sending you a message privately to get your email so that she, and what format you like so that she can deliver your ebook. Oh, and you have to say which one you want, if you want Linda's Lament or Debris Dreams or Shattered Sky, because David has 3 books that we're celebrating today. I'm sure I'm supposed to say something else. And I saw somebody typed a question in, and we will get to your question because we have a little extra time for more questions in a minute. But let me make sure that we're doing everything we're supposed to do. Oh, so I had mentioned Madeline Holly Rosing had given us so much help on the Kickstarter, and I also wanted to thank for the Hereafter Bytes. Ellen Bond is also here. She was a copy editor. So thank you so much, Ellen. That was for the Hereafter Bytes. And again, all of the wonderful people who supported the Kickstarter. I'm just going fuzzy because of how grateful we are to you. Hopefully that's going to fix itself in a second. But you can still hear me. And also for David's books, we have Gail Schultz here, who copy edited, I'm pretty sure, the whole trilogy. Oh, that looks like I'm clear again. And let's see, is Sandy here? I'm looking. Sandy Billings.
She was able to get back on.
Okay, she's having trouble with her internet. Unfortunately, she did the covers of all 3 Lunar Cycle books. This is her gorgeous, amazing artwork that wraps, this is my favorite thing, when it wraps around the spine and goes onto the back. I love it so much. And then I unfortunately, Shattered Sky is my favorite, but I unfortunately do not have a physical copy of it. So you'll have to go and, look on the internet to find it. And here's Luna's Lament with the Drew on the moon. And you'll notice that her helmet is just sitting there. She looks pretty not asphyxiating.
Mysterious. Do you want me to get my copy of Shattered Skies from downstairs?
Oh, yes, please. That would be fabulous. Thank you, David. I'll show a couple others. Sandy has done so many covers for us. This is Sibling Rivalry, which I'll wrap around a little bit, by Anthony Francis, who is on this call. And Beyond the Fence. I love this book. If you love short, spooky, speculative fiction, Marilyn Horn. And this is the tree person. that Sandy made. Oh, Lisa, can you spotlight David so he can show the Shattered Sky cover? There we go. And then just turn it slowly so that we can see that it wraps around. Maybe that one, it's hard to tell because it's dark on the back. Thank you, David. Okay, so I'll come back. We'll have a little bit more Q&A. You can ask any more questions. I know there was one, just type into the chat. And if you would like to win a copy of this, I consider this a book. It is a postcard with a short story called Finnegan's Firewall by David Colby. If you came to my Finnegan's Wake Read Aloud, don't enter because I'm going to send you one. And you can see the back of it. I will personally put a stamp on this and write you a small note and send it to you if you type postcard into the chat and then win our little contest. So, oh yeah, and then I'm supposed to say, which I only said once, if you didn't win, then all is not lost because these books are for sale at all places that sell books. And Lisa is putting links into the chat for a link to help you buy them if you would like to. So I have a question that someone asked of, so now we're having a Q&A and type postcard into the chat if you would like to receive this personally hand-sent postcard of Finnegan's Firewall by David Colby with amazing art by Sandy Billingsley. Here's a question for David. How many hours do you write a day these days?
A lot.
Great.
Usually between, I don't know, 4 or 5, I think.
4 or 5 hours
Kind
a
of
day. Wow.
Scattered throughout the day.
Thank you. Let's see. So for the robots to do chores for you, Anthony says that he's working on the robots. Just give him time. Yeah, we're waiting for that one that tells us what to eat for dinner. I wonder if there's an app to tell us what to eat for dinner. That could, yeah, we didn't need an actual physical robot to tell us that. Oh, some Zoom bomber problems. Lisa, are you fixing the Zoom bomber problem?
Yeah, I think we got him.
Thank you. Okay. Oh, and then Lisa also put in this little block of links here. You can find all our books at thinkinginkpress.com. The link is in the chat. So anybody have any more questions for our lovely authors? Well, I'm checking to see, to make sure I said everything I'm supposed to say. Don't forget to type postcard into the chat if you want to win the postcard. An actual physical postcard, not an e-postcard. Let's see. Okay. Electra says, is Hereafter Bytes part of a series or a standalone book?
I will definitely write something in a similar vein. I don't know if it'll be directly connected. It might be like the same world, but just a different corner of it. I don't know if I'll be doing a direct sequel to the Hereafter Bytes. I kind of like it the way it stands as a single story, but I'm not totally, if a really good idea strikes me, I always got to be open to, you know, wherever inspiration strikes.
Great. And then Benetson says, really fun listening to the readings. Thank you. And Rose says, what's next for each of the authors? So Vincent, you're unmuted, so go ahead. Oh no, just kidding, you're not unmuted. But you're on my screen.
I guess, yeah, I mean, yeah, like probably I will write another book in the vein of sort of comedic science fiction. And it'll probably play in a little bit different thematic vein, but yeah, and it'll probably be, yeah, I don't know. It really comes down to, as I'm constructing the world, does it make sense to include some of the world building from the Hereafter Bytes, or does that start to interfere with the story that I'm telling in the next book, whether or not they'll be connected or just, you know, different funny sci-fi books linked by tone and theme rather than by direct, same shared universe.
Okay, so next for Vincent, more funny sci-fi, yay! And how about you, David?
I'm working on editing a few books currently. I'm not sure what I'm going to work next on for the young adults marketplace. I'm also thinking of taking a short break soon because I have been writing a lot lately and my wrists are kind of tired. So we'll have to wait and see.
That's, make sure that you see a physical therapist and really, I'm serious. You got to take it seriously. That's really important.
I know, I'm stretching and doing all the,
okay.
Wearing these.
All right, well, whatever's next for you, we hope that you will be healthy for it.
Yeah.
Last chance to enter for the postcard. Sandy says, are you going to have audiobooks made? Is that Sandy Billingsley? Are you available to say hi to everybody? Our wonderful cover artist. She's still there.
I was having issues. I was like here and gone and here and gone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yay, glad you're here. Lisa, can you spotlight Sandy for a sec?
I believe she has joined all of you in being spotlit. At least for me, she is spotlit with. Here,
Oh, okay.
Let me change. Okay. She should be front and center.
Okay. So I'm so glad that you could make it, Sandy. Thank you so much for doing all our covers. Yay. Okay, next is the award. So Marion Barker has won the postcard. Yay, I'm excited. Congratulations. I will be sending that to you. So Lisa will contact you through the chat to get your mailing address because this has to be sent actually through the mail. And let's see if anybody has any other. Oh, here we go. Yay. Rose has a question for Sandy. Do you read the whole book before you do the cover?
No, I'm terrible at reading. I listen to books. I rarely read. Yeah, I'm very slow. I have dyslexia. But as everybody who helped create the book knows, we have meetings and just sort of discuss what the author and what the publisher wants and editor on the book, on the cover.
Thank you. So any more questions, go ahead and type in. I'll wait for just a minute. I think I said all of the funny technologies and robot chores that people wanted. And if you have won something, please make sure that you stay on long enough so that we know that Lisa tells you that we're able to deliver your prize. Okay, I have one more question for the authors. Do you think either of you would focus a book on a topic about events happening this year?
Well, probably. I mean, like, let's be honest here. I'm writing Babylon 5 fan fiction. That's basically about this year. Like, if you've seen the show, then you know there's plague, authoritarians, war, calamity, catastrophe, all that fun stuff. So, in fact, that's been the biggest feedback I've been getting on this fan fiction is basically like, wow, this is topical. And I'm like, yeah, this is all written in the 90s. So, forward thinking. But for my non-fan fiction stuff, I don't actually think so, because it'd be too depressing. These books are very sad, and I've written enough sad things by writing these books. Only happy books from now on.
Yeah, I think a year like this, it'll change what people are instinctually willing to accept in terms of extreme outcomes of the future. So I don't know if I'll specifically write about stuff that's happened this year, but I feel like in the future, you'll, as a science fiction author, be able to get away with like much more bizarre, extreme futures, and people are like, yeah, 100%, I believe it. Seems plausible. So it'll end up shaping science fiction one way or the other.
Unexpected benefit of global pandemic. Anthony says the plot for 2020 would have been rejected as a book in the 90s, right? As too implausible.
It's the Tiffany problem.
All right.
No, it's not.
Well, I think that this has been a very wonderful event. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming. And if you want to, I'm sorry?
Thanks for having it.
Oh, yeah. We have to celebrate our authors even if we can't get together in person. Marion says, thank you to the authors and organizers. Oh, Catherine says, for good reason, the plot of 2020 would have been rejected as a book in the 90s. People are saying thank you. And Lisa, if you can just paste those links into the chat one more time for people to get the books if they want to, since there's no table in the back. And that will conclude the official portion of this event. So I really appreciate everybody coming. Thank you so much. And if you go to thinkinginkpress.com, somewhere there is a way to join our mailing list if you would like to know about events like this in the future. Please click that link that Lisa put in the chat, thinkinginkpress.com, and then I don't remember exactly where it is, it might be on the side, but search around for a form where you can type your email address in and push, join the list button so that you can find out about things in the future. I'm just gonna read down the chat, but this is done. This is the time when, in a physical event, we've said thank you, and everyone's kind of like milling around now. So feel free to leave if you would like. I'm just going to read out the chat because that's what we're going to replace the milling around with. Thank you so much. Bye. Hope to see you soon. Charlotte says, thank you for hosting. I enjoyed it. Love hearing what others are thinking and writing. Anthony says, thank you to all our attendees, authors, artists, and staff of Thinking Inc. Vincent says, yay. Jay says, thank you for putting this on. That's our pleasure. Hope to see you again in another one. Bye, David. Thanks for coming. Bye, Vincent. Thank you. Thank you so much for coming. We hope that you enjoyed it. If you'd like to buy either of these books or any of our books, or sign up for our mailing list to find out about new events that are coming up, please go to thinkinginkpress.com. See you next time.